So, namaste, welcome to Satsang. So, this evening I seem to have a whole stack of questions that have been sent in suddenly appearing. So, I'm going to use some time first to go through some of these questions and then I'll open it up for anyone that wants to ask a question live on here too. So, we'll get started with the first question. This one says, "Hi Helen, I spend a lot of time outdoors in Michigan's forests where I enjoy great beauty in nature everywhere I go. Question, what in us enjoys beauty? These physical eyes see forests, but my eyes themselves are not the enjoyer of this beauty. And this sense of beauty seems to have little to do with the stuff of cognition, intellect, or ego. What is left but the self to be the enjoyer of beauty, right? I ride a bike everywhere I go, and it's easy to get lost in thought on a country road or a trail and miss the beauty. Just mechanically riding along with eyes glued to the surface in front of me, and this mind lost in some story or other. And I may not wake up from that hypnosis for minutes at a time. The moment I return to I am and zoom out to take in the whole being, the whole I am, the beauty can be shocking. It seems like the moment I re-identify with the self, capital S, the beauty in nature shines, and vice versa. The beauty often wakes me up from the mind's hypnosis and returns me to I am. Anyway, don't you think it is that the self, capital S, in us that enjoys beauty? And in your experience, as identity shifted more or less permanently to the self, did you find yourself more attuned to the presence of beauty? It's absolutely the self that is recognizing beauty. The mind, our separate sense of self, our egoic sense of self, really only tends to perceive a few things as beautiful that fit a certain criteria of ideas. If something checks all the boxes, then mind would describe it as beautiful. But there is, of course, with that, the opposite experience. As identity shifts here, as you've pointed to, then absolutely there is more awareness of beauty, and eventually that sense of beauty is just continuous, because, as you've said here, it's nothing to do with thoughts. In fact, the more thoughts we're believing, the less our capability is to actually directly perceive reality. And when you perceive reality without any thoughts in the way, then it can be extraordinarily stunning. Even things that most people would label as mundane or ordinary or irrelevant or boring can be stunningly beautiful. Their manifestation really is experienced more like a kind of a sculpture made out of the self, by the self, for the self. It's kind of playing with these shapes, making all these different shapes, never making the same shape twice. It is infinite. And when you see what everything is really without the thoughts about it, you just perceive directly the shape and you know what the essence of that thing is, then there's beauty all around us. We're actually walking around in paradise and don't really tend to notice because, as you said, we're stuck in our thoughts so often. So as identity shifts and you're seeing things more and more directly without thinking about them so much, or thoughts are not being paid attention to so much, given so much relevance, then you'll absolutely notice. And as you've pointed out here, it's it starts off with for most of us in nature, a great work of art, some human being who we find particularly beautiful, a sunset, a baby, a newborn baby, or something like that we find beautiful. But really why we find those beautiful is because we're not thinking about them, we're directly perceiving them. You're not standing looking at a sunset, analyzing it, whether it's as pink as an orange as the last one that you saw. You're just admiring it, appreciating it, which is a form of love. And the more we can directly perceive something and appreciate it, it will take on a depth of quality and character that it perhaps didn't seem to have when we're looking through our thoughts. The perceiving through thoughts, through mind, just diminishes what we can experience in and of this moment. And you might find that you find the most mundane and ordinary things quite beautiful as this progresses. And the difference between those two worlds for me was quite shocking, as you said. A world of stress and drama and too much to do and not there yet. And then suddenly everything is just already perfect and beautiful. And for a while, you kind of go in and out of those. And you see if you can, if you want to develop this, of course, only if you want to, see if you can look at something ordinary. Just pick something ordinary and get really, a sofa or a chair or a house or something that you wouldn't normally class as beautiful, and just see if you can really sort of want to see what it really is. Just see if you can sit with that. What is it really? What is this thing really? Because if I label it with my mind, I'm going to miss the essence of it. What if we're walking around in paradise and we haven't really noticed that? And it is a whole different world, same planet, but a whole different experience. So yeah, it's absolutely the self, and two different worlds for ego and self. Okay, next one. I read Helen's article on silence. I always hear a soft rustling sound. I don't have to focus on this sound. It's always there, no matter if my surroundings are quiet or filled with noise. I know there's nothing wrong with my hearing. Is this the silence, or simply the blood rushing through my veins? Well, there are some subtle sounds that we hear. There are sort of gross, tangible sounds like these words or dog barking or cars passing by. But the subtle sounds, we can often kind of hear the vibration that runs through the body as a humming sound or some similar to what you've described here. But it could only be the silence if it was continuous. And even if this sound is continuous during the waking state, you cannot hear this rustling sound when you're asleep. Or if you were given an anesthetic for some reason, you wouldn't be able to hear that sound then, would you? Only something that is continuous is the silence. It's got to be here, present all the time. So actually what hears this rustling sound is the silence. So if you think about it for a little bit, then to hear a sound, even to hear these words, you have to be listening quietly to hear. If there was a really loud noise inside you right now, you wouldn't be able to hear these words. Just as if you walked into a room and there was really loud music playing in that room, you wouldn't be able to hear what someone was saying across the other side of the room. But if the room was silent and someone was talking in the corner, you'd be able to hear what they're saying. The very fact you can hear this sound, it's a subtle sound, but it is still a sound. It's coming and going. It's not continuous. It's not available forever. And it is perceivable by you. So you're listening quietly. The very act of listening is quite silent, isn't it? We kind of like this sort of listening. Awareness is listening. and watching. It's doing that silently. So see if you can bring some attention to what hears that sound, even that subtle sound you can perceive, and see what comes out of that. And that sound may never go, but it is more recognized to be one of the subtle sounds of vibration and energy. Some people describe it as a high-pitched ringing or a buzzing or sort of a whining sound vibration. So I hope that helps with that one. Okay, next one. Hi, Helen. I have a question about silence and awareness. I've heard and read countless times from the great sages and from contemporary teachers and books that the way back to our natural state of being is through either awareness of awareness or holding on to the sense of I, which is said to be the awareness in the body or being. Many times they explicitly state that these are the only methods, or at least the only methods that work well enough to teach. The reasoning is that awareness is aware of the absence of objects as empty space and as well as the presence of objects. And awareness is aware of the absence of sound as silence and as well as the presence of sound, and is thus our true state. They say that only awareness has this faculty to be aware of nothingness or thingness. Both silence and awareness are formless, and in my experience during meditation, both the background of silence and the background of awareness are one and the same. But I'm still unsure if this is really true, or if I'm just convincing myself of this. I was wondering if you could talk about how silence and awareness, from your view, are the same, or how they are related to each other. I would really appreciate that because I've been caught up in choosing one or the other for a long while now. It can get very frustrating. Thank you very much for all you do here. I remember being really frustrated by this on my own pathway because I'd listen to some teachers and they'd talk about silence, others would talk about I am, and others would talk about stillness and beingness, consciousness. And I was really, really confused because sometimes there was this very palpable silence, very noticeable, almost felt tangible. And sometimes I would recognize that there was, it felt more like awareness rather than silence. But as I was just saying for the previous question, awareness is kind of paying attention. It's kind of watching, isn't it? It's watching through the eyes. It's listening through the ears. It's tasting through the tongue. It's kind of experiencing and watching quietly. So if you really look at awareness, you'll see for it to be aware, it has to be silent. It has to be silent already. And contrary to popular belief, the silence is not just dead or inert. Empty space is actually the empty space of being. There's right here. We can't see it with our eyes, but it is intelligence. It is pure intelligence, ascensions before form. So it helped me really to get beyond this by asking, instead of trying to find out whether they're one and the same, this may work better for you as well, or may not. How is the self showing up for me right now in this moment? And this is where this list of 14 different doorways, we kind of called them, into the self came from when I really was on my own pathway. Sometimes recognizing the self must always be here. I began to ask, how is it showing up right now? What does it feel like, for want of a better word, because it's not a feeling, and sometimes it would be here as the silence. It would seem to be showing me one face, one mood that it has, so to speak. Other times it would just be a sense that I'm conscious. There's consciousness present. Sometimes it'd be a real stillness, just a sense that I have never moved, ever. And all this is kind of coming and going inside me. So it might help you to kind of switch to this question: how is it showing up for me right now? How am I noticing it right now? Because we all have our favorite ways to tune in and recognize that real self. And those may differ. It may differ from even the start of one meditation period to the end of it. Sometimes I'd start by being aware of awareness, and in the end, there was just this complete stillness. So have a play with that and see if that helps. The sense of choosing is really is coming from the sense that they're two different things, which they absolutely aren't. And you've pointed to that, obviously, but some part of our mind is trying to choose. I would suggest finding as many ways to recognize the self, the noumenon, the supreme being, the real true self, whatever you want to call it tonight, as you can, because then you never feel cut off from it. You never feel, I can't hear the silence right now. I feel cut off from it. Okay, well, how is it showing up right now then? Well, there's just a sense of stillness. There's a sense of quietness. So if you imagine it as a diamond or a jewel or something, and it's got all these different faces that it shows you, it is you, but at different times it will be showing you a different way to kind of access it. And you can even really just you could spend, that's an excellent meditation practice in itself. How is the self showing up for me right now? However it's showing up, it will be continuous. It will seem to be in the background of your experience initially, and it will seem quite ordinary at first. It won't seem exciting. It's, well, awareness, I've always had awareness. It won't seem like a big deal. So hopefully that gives you something to work with there. And then when you see all those faces, you'll recognize they're all faces of the one being. They're all moods of the one being, for want of a better word. Okay, next one. My question for today was fear of being seen, fear of speaking aloud, inferiority. Is it coming from my ego? Sincerely. So yeah, any fear, fear comes in lots of different forms, doesn't it? You've mentioned fear of being seen, fear of speaking aloud, inferiority. It's all coming from this separate sense of self, the essence of being separate to all these other beings, feeling separate to all these other beings, rather, and all these other things is fear. And because we tend to feel as a separate being that we're not good enough, you've pointed here to inferiority, some sense of inadequacy, unworthiness, just not good enough. I had this myself, like everyone does, and it manifested in very similar ways. Not wanting to be heard, not wanting to be seen, wanting to hide, so that nobody sees me and recognizes how inadequate I really am, says the separate self. But really that fear is based on what we think we are, who we think we are as a separate being. If you can sort of imagine for a moment with a deep sense of recognition that everything is yourself with a capital S, everything is the same as you, shares the same essence. Eventually that fear has to disappear when you see that, because there is no other beings out there to judge us, to feel superior over us or inferior. We feel inferior, all of that. Of course, we've all experienced being judged by others, and that is a reflection of our own sense of judging ourselves. Our own feeling of inferiority reflects in our outer experience as somebody criticizing or judging or something like that. So as you really question, am I really separate? Am I really separate to anything? Or you come to see through self-inquiry meditation that what I am is not a thing. It's not a shape. It's not an object. I'm not really a someone, although I feel I'll always feel like someone. I can also recognize that what I really am is essentially formless, doesn't have a shape. And as that sinks in deeper, then it becomes clear that I can't really be separate to anything. There can't really be two formlessnesses. There can't be, if you were sat next to me here, where would the empty space of my being stop and yours start? Could you really have a division, a dividing line in something that hasn't got any substance to it? You could do that with an object. You could split it in two, couldn't you? Or put two things together. But with the subjective space of our being, can we really actually be divided? And what does that mean then if you can't really divide your being into parts, into pieces? How far does it go in all directions from where you're noticing it with the body mind? Where the body mind is situated, how far does it reach? And as you really investigate like this, you're going to lose this fear. It's a sense that there are other beings, and our ego is constantly comparing with this other being in our experience, with how it thinks we should be in the future or right now. It's constantly comparing with how it thinks we should have been in the past, what we should and shouldn't have done or said or thought, all of those things. That's where this fear comes from. As the self, it's really very challenging to feel fear at all. It begins to really diminish, because the self is that self is everywhere and encompasses everything. So there's a deeper recognition that there's nothing to be scared of. Actually, there is nothing outside of me that can hurt me. And this is where this fear comes from. Just checking out also, if you want to, if it's really true that you're inferior. Can you be inferior or superior? Do those categories apply to the real self? And inferior or superior to who or to what? Of course, all this seems very real while we're stuck in it, doesn't it? So I absolutely understand that. Okay, I hope that helps. We'll try 2 more and then I'll open it up. If anybody does want to ask a question here, just feel free to put your hand up on Zoom, and when I've answered these 2, we'll move to these questions. Okay, so next one. I am very lonely and depressed. I had applied for medically assisted dying. The application was approved, but then I felt a lot of anxiety and fear, so I cancelled it for now. Please give some advice that can help me. So I can't and shouldn't advise you on assisted dying. It's entirely your decision, but I can speak about loneliness and depression, both of which I really had to battle with in my own life and eventually overcome. And I know it affects a lot of beings. But we don't have to feel, of course, if you however you feel right now, we can honor that, but we can also begin to question the beliefs that are reflecting as these emotions. Each negative emotion that we feel is a reflection, a mirror image of a thought, a story being believed. And the more negative emotion we feel, the more conviction we have in this story. And because we're not conscious that we have these beliefs, because we've believed them for so long, we're not even aware of that thought going through our mind. We're only knowing it's there because of how it makes us feel inside, the emotional response to that. And of course, the reflecting experience in our life, some experience agreeing, reflecting the story. So what is the loneliness? If you want to overcome this, then have a look at what the loneliness is saying inside. And it will be some story. I'm alone. I don't have what I need to be happy, to be safe, or some deep-seated belief that is being given a lot of attention because we've experienced it over and over again. And perhaps we've had it for so long, we haven't even really recognized. And depression, in my own depression, the depths of my depression, there is a real sense that there's just no point. There's a sense of apathy. There's no way to climb out of this. There's no way to continue. And of course, whatever the story is that we're believing will feel very, very true. But if we will begin to question it, then we can begin to come out of it. We're only suffering from the thoughts that we believe. We're never suffering from our external experience, although it seems that way. We're suffering from the thoughts we believe about our experience. So as we begin to question, is it really true that I can't get out of this, that I'm stuck? Or, beginning to look as well at what you want. What do you want out of life? What do you want out of existence? Does it have to stay as it is right now? Can it change? And what's going to determine that change? Is it going to be some sense of being able to break through? So there's a video on the core teachings on my YouTube channel, Contemplation, and it shows you how to work with a question in order to transcend a belief, a story like this. So ask these emotions what they're showing you. What would they tell you? What would the loneliness and depression tell you if it had a mouth? If it was a person, what would it say? What does it want to? What's the real story behind it? And then you can begin to question if that's true. And then at least that way you will be having a better existence and you'll know what is right for you then with this decision rather than making a decision from this place of depression. I absolutely feel for you and send my love. I have been in that big black hole many times. Okay, so what time are we on? Oh, we need one more and then Hi Helen, just wondering what your thoughts are. What your thoughts are about what you share compared to the Neo-Advaita message that even the I am presence is completely illusory too. I feel like there's a resonance here with both messages. Maybe the paradox is that they are both true. Their message seems to point to the idea that acknowledging that I am at all comes from the illusion of separation, that awareness of implies duality. I could be completely wrong, but it seems that sharing through females seems to cater more to an awakening process rather than strict denial of any personal position. It seems a more all-encompassing sharing. I would be truly interested in your thoughts about this. Thank you so much. So I don't really know too much about the Neo-Advaita way, except for perhaps what you've mentioned here already. If it is a denial of the need for practice and a statement that we are already that, then you probably find the same message at certain points during my teaching as well. I can really only talk about my own experience with teaching and what's been helpful. And for me, it was most helpful to meet to being exactly where they are. So if someone is really struggling with a really intense negative emotion, then just to tell them that their separate being doesn't exist and that they are simply believing thoughts quite often is just not helpful. In fact, it can make things worse. And I did originally, I was very direct and my teaching style was very different, and I really saw that my responsibility or role, so to speak, was to the essence of love would be to meet that being exactly where they're at, not where I think they should be, or not to tell them what I want to tell them, but what they really need to hear in that moment. And that has led to a fuller expression of separate being isn't real. It never has been, never will be, but it sure seems real. And when we are experiencing it and stuck in it, sometimes to be told it doesn't exist really, it certainly didn't help me when I was stuck in that, because I knew it didn't exist. I was just like, well, how do I start actually experiencing that? And maybe I'm completely wrong about what the Neo-Advaita movement is, but if you ever have read anything from Sri Anandamaya Ma, she was extraordinarily direct. She was one of my heroes, so to speak, and she was a Zen, almost like a Zen teacher at times, very, very direct and too immediate. So I don't really know, can't really comment about sort of male versus female teachers. I think it's really more important to realize that the individual way expresses through each teacher is suitable for those that are drawn to it, and it will express itself in a myriad of different ways. There's all these different teachers throughout the ages, just as it expressing itself as all these different students or seekers or whatever we're calling ourselves tonight. So essentially, I'm saying the same thing as what they're saying, maybe just in a sometimes it just depends. It depends what the person is there for, So I find myself 1 minute saying the separate being doesn't exist. There's no need for any more practice for you. And then next minute I'll be telling someone to meditate. So it's an impossible job to do. Okay, so if anyone would like to ask a question, feel free to raise your hand. I have a couple more questions there, but give some time for if anyone wants to share or ask anything. Does anyone have any challenges or issues going on for them? If not, I will continue with these other two questions. I'll clear my inbox. Okay, well, I'll read this one for now. Dear Helen, I had a strong awakening some months ago where everything seemed to drop away and the beautiful emptiness of everything became obvious and simple. This lasted for about 6 months, and there really were no stories that stuck at all. However, in the past few weeks, there seem to be a couple of big old patterns coming in strongly, one of which is extremely disturbing, and it seems to happen every time I get ill. I get ill quite often. I just got over a simple cold that's only lasted 2 days, but the experience that came with it rocked me to the core, and it was extremely frightening. It is so difficult to describe what happens, and it seems very dark, maybe like a child in a state of panic. My head goes mental, trying to find a way to escape and not knowing what is going on. Like I want to crawl out of my skin. It's unbearable, and I'm concerned it may be a traumatic childhood memory surfacing that I've touched on in the past. I don't know if that's just a story or how best to deal with something as traumatic and strange as like this. When it passes, it's like nothing happened, but it does seem to keep returning. Could you say anything about childhood trauma held in the body, or any other insights any other insights that you think this could be? Also, do you think journaling about it seems to help? But is this just buying into and perpetuating the story more? I recently found your talks and love them and resonate deeply. Many thanks and love and gratitude. So most of us have this honeymoon period where we have a seeing of what we really are. And for a while there is peace, love and joy and all things good. And at some point during that process, during that seeing deepening, in order to live as what we've seen to be true, to live as the real self, whatever stories we're still holding on to about ourselves, about others, about awakening, about life, about God, the self, we have to bring to the surface to transcend through some questioning or just deep seeing that they're not true. And what's happening here is this illness is probably a reflection of the fear, the trauma inside the body. Our mind can't solve this because our mind says, I'm scared because I'm getting ill. But really the illness is a reflection of fear in the body. Trauma, while it's intense, it is still fear and can be dealt with in the same way as fear. So really just by allowing that as much as we can, and if that's not much at all in any moment, that's okay. But again, looking at the story behind the fear, what is fear? What is the trauma saying? And we've all had experiences, perhaps from our past as a child, that we'd rather not remember. But until we really deal with the story, that's the belief, then it's going to keep on coming up. And for the self, these stories are not true. So having to look at them will allow us then to live permanently as that self. So what does fear say? What would it say to you, this trauma? If you could ask that little child, what do you feel right now? Yourself as a child, they'll probably say that I don't feel safe. I feel unsafe. I feel in danger. And if you look at the core of fear, that's really what it's reflecting to us, isn't it? That I'm not safe. And we can then begin to question that. Is that true for me now? It felt extraordinarily true in those moments, these memories that we're remembering. And it may feel true in this moment when we're feeling that fear come to the surface. But is that true for me now? And is it really ever been true, actually? If we just gently allow this kind of question to become important to us, we can begin to undo the effects of this story, which is endless fear. As a separate being, everything and everyone is separate to us, outside of us, and outside of our control. And we we just have to kind of try to survive in the world, and we might find ourselves changing to please other beings so that we feel safer. Many of us become people pleasers so that we don't have to, so that people like us more, we feel safer. And it's probably this is coming to the surface now for you, that you cannot really hold on to this story and live as what you experienced for that 6 months. To live as that continuously, these stories have to come to the surface. How do we see those stories and release them? We look at the emotion. What's the emotion I'm feeling? And what's the story behind that? And I can acknowledge that some part of my being, although I may know it consciously that it's not true, some part of my being really is still believing this is true. And I can feel that by how my body feels when something is triggered inside, some memory or some current event. So accepting that some part of you still is really, really believing this, you can begin to question. And I think journaling for me really helped And it depends what you're journaling. If you're lost in the memories, perhaps that's not so helpful, but journaling about asking the question and seeing the fear come up, that it doesn't always have an external cause. It's just coming up, and journaling about that can help keep it in your conscious awareness. For me, it was helpful, but it's not everybody's thing, is it, to journal? So, well, whatever you feel, you can journal as the self that's really looking at this and inquiring about this, or you can journal as a separate being that's really going back into the story and really sort of living it more. So it's entirely just to check which way you're doing that if you want to journal. Okay. So no hands up, so I'll read this last question. Hi Helen, thank you for helping pointers from illusion. Much appreciated. I can't seem to prove that I am not separate by looking. Much seems like separate objects in unlimited space. I realize I am aware, and awareness has no physical location, just like a thought. So maybe they are similar. When I look again and again, I am aware of physical objects having a time and place. I am also aware of thoughts having no location but temporary in time. I am also aware of awareness having no specific location, but at the time seemingly constrained to an area around the body, since I can't be aware of anything very far away. Additionally, it seems awareness is limited to times when conscious, and awareness seems to have a subject-object relationship where awareness is aware of something else. I don't seem to be able to see, as I look over and over, a lack of separateness. Yet at the same time, a dream seems to contain separate objects, but that is illusion. In the dream, just as in life, there seems to be separate objects. I logically understand how objects may not be separate and may be illusion, but that's as far as I get, an unproved or unexperienced hypothesis. Okay, so what drew my attention in this was where you said here, awareness seems to have no specific location, but at the same time seemingly constrained to an area around the body, since I can't be aware of anything very far away. So those two are very paradoxical. So it has no location. It's not in one place, awareness, in time and space. It's not over here or over there. And then you're saying it feels constrained to a kind of a bubble around my body, just big, slightly bigger than my body or something like that. And that's how it feels. It really, really seems that way. It was how it started for me too. The silence seemed just around the body, near the body. But if awareness doesn't have a location, all this will become clear if you really focus on everything else you've written there will become clear. If you really, if it becomes very important to you to find out what it means that awareness isn't located in a place. Awareness is present. We can prove that right now because you can hear these words. You can see what your eyes are seeing. You know what your body feels like. Awareness is here. And it's not in any place. It's not here or there or over there. It's not a thing, awareness, that can be somewhere. And if we put a map of the universe, let's say we put a map of the universe on the wall behind me, and I ask you to say, where is the awareness? And you couldn't tell me that it's here, or it's here, or it's here, because that would imply that it is an object, it is a something, it has a shape and an edge and a boundary where my awareness stops. So if awareness is present, but not present as an object, it must be present as the subjective space itself. And you can really, if you really get interested in this, for me, this became suddenly really important to prove to myself. And I know that's what you're trying to do here as well. But if you look at what it means that it's not an object, there's only two categories for existence. There's objects, which aren't really objects, as you've sort of pointed to. And then there's the subjective space, the subjectivity, the pure space, empty space of being in which those objects are appearing. So if awareness isn't an object, what really is it then? It's not a physical object. Can it really be constrained in around my body only? And you've said here, since it seems to be constrained around my body since I can't be aware of things very far away. What if that's the other way around? What if you can't be aware of things very far away because you think awareness is constrained around the body, or it's an assumption that's being believed? So I'd really urge you to look at what it means that awareness isn't an object. What is it then? How far does it reach in all directions from you? If it doesn't have an edge, a shape, things have an edge. My hand is this big. Here's the edge of my hand. Can it be the same for the empty space of being? Can it be the same for that which is formless? How far does it go then? And eventually you'll see quite quickly, depending on how really interested you stay in that question, mind will throw all kinds of other interesting things at you to distract you from this. But as you look at this, what does it really mean, really? How far does awareness reach? Can it be stopped anywhere? What does it mean if it can't? Is the universe then appearing inside awareness? Or are you someone aware inside the universe? And it'll seem to be both as you really develop this. So first, prove to yourself that awareness must be everywhere at all times. Then, second step, prove that awareness must be, if it's everywhere at all times, it must be right where the objects seem to be, where our thoughts seem to be. Awareness must be there first. Can you have, the second thing to prove then, and the way to prove these is just by really wanting to know. If you have a burning desire to know, you will see. Can there really be an object and the subjective awareness in the same place? Is this really a hand then, inside the space? Can there be space and a hand in the same place, in the same location? In the same atoms of space, can there be two things in the same place? Can they really be, or is there only one? So have a play with that and see. And then really what the objects are will just become clearer, that they are just awareness looking like something. Just a real intense desire to find out what it means that awareness isn't an object, and not letting mind distract you with some other question, which it will try to do, because this is the most important question of all, really. Okay, lovely. So Claire, when you're ready.
Thanks, Helen. I'm not sure if this is a share or a question. I think it's a share. We've been talking a bit about fear. Mm-hmm. So I made a decision, and this week I've been actioning the decision, but other beings around me have not believed my decision. And it's like then the fears come up, and I've had to sit and look at it and face it and realize it's not real. And then it's I've made the decision, and it's a response, not a reaction. But it's taken 4 days for the other beings around me to kind of accept that decision. Mm-hmm. They've kind of come back to me. And then they say to me, well, you're extremely calm. Are you really sure about this decision? and I've sat with it, and then the fears come up. And I think sometimes the fear's not being about the decision, I think it goes back to my own worthiness. It's about what other people think of me.
Mm-hmm.
So I think yesterday morning, when the big fear was there and I was sticking with my decision, I think when I looked at it, it was to do with other people's labels and not my own. So I think, I'm not really sure where I'm going to with this, but it's been really strange looking at it and looking at it playing out, that it hasn't, it's more, mine's more being looking at I think it's more to do with labels and unworthiness and disapproval than to do with the actual fear. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, and that is, it's very common, isn't it, that if I make a decision which a lot of other beings around me wouldn't make, then I'm kind of standing out from the crowd in that way. And that's really our ego's worst nightmare, isn't it? That it wants to go along with the way of fitting in, like you, one of those previous questions, fear of being seen, and of being judged by other beings. And you're so never more aware of that sense than when you're doing something that goes against the grain with everyone else, or you're about to do something, and you can really feel it, can't you? There's that something inside just wants everyone to agree with you, and doesn't want any uncomfortableness around that. But as you recognize that that they're only really excuse me, they're only really telling you what they would be feeling in that situation too, right? They would be feeling that particular way in that situation.
Yeah, that question about the fear of being seen. All of a sudden, I felt in the spotlight, I think.
Yeah, and then
that's yeah.
Yeah. So, are they really seeing you, or are they seeing their thoughts about you in that moment? Because it's a huge difference, isn't it? If they're like, oh my goodness, I wouldn't do that, or, I don't think you should do that, or whatever has been coming at you, so it's based on they're experiencing their thoughts about your decision rather than your actual decision or yourself.
Yeah. When I looked at it last night, the notes I made came down to labels. Mm-hmm. Labels was what kept coming up. Yeah. Labels. But I don't. It's taken a few days for it to. But I just kept going back to looking at the fears and talking to people and going through what it was about. And it's funny, even it just in 10 minutes it went from a football to a marble, because I didn't shy away from it. I just went, okay, and I looked straight at it. Yeah. With the help of somebody else. And for me, that's amazing. And I think I really wanted to share that, because the way it went in 10 minutes from like that feeling, that it was, yeah. But yeah, that fear of being seen and other people's labels, I think that was what it has come down to a bit as well.
And as that sense of unworthiness begins to disappear, it lingers for a little while, and you felt a little bit of it over this decision, but more important than anything becomes your own opinion of yourself, and that's the opinion of the self rather than the ego's opinion, which is being mirrored in these other beings, isn't it? Reflecting back to you. So it's a healthy sign of, okay, I don't like that you disagree with me, and I might listen to what you say to see if there's any truth in it, but eventually I'm going to do what feels right for me because it feels right for me. And that's my criteria for making a decision now, isn't it? As you kind of love yourself more, do what's right for you. So well done. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Lovely. Steve, when you're ready.
Hello, Helen.
Hiya.
Hiya. I'm I don't know how to share. I'm not going to share a word. I'm not going to say nothing. And then as time went on, and I realised no one's putting their hand up, I started thinking about something that's going on. I thought, shall I? And now I'm here saying it, and I'm just thinking, how do I word it? I seem to have manifested a similar situation to what I've had previously in meetings I go to. I've manifested another controller. And somehow I know it's me. I know it's me. It's there for me to look at. You know what I mean?
Oh no, not again. Here we go again, right? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I didn't realise what was happening until it came. I thought, is it the same situation you're in over there now? God, and I know it's about separation, and I can look and see there's no separation really, Steve. But I've been chairing this meeting for the last 5 weeks. It's a step meeting, call it step meeting. So we do a step a week, and there's like a rotary explaining meeting, introducing people and what he's doing, what's up, and every week I forgot something, I've missed something or whatever, and she's always there to remind me. You know what I mean? It started a bit last week, but this week it really started to annoy it. You know, and I thought, God, and I told somebody else we were doing it last 12 weeks, and I said, I've got this bit of a resentment against so and so. He said, "Oh, wait till 9th week." He said, "You'd be ready for throwing." He said she's exactly the same to him. So, in one sense, I thought, I'm not completely nuts. It isn't just me.
So why is this showing up again then? Why is this coming
separation?
Around again?
Isn't it? You were saying it's separation. You always said, "Oh, I'm trying to see that separation."
What was the emotions as well that come up with it? What the stories that is probably just that one of the stories is beliefs is still playing there. You mentioned frustration, I think, did you?
Because it's still here. Yeah. See, we have a past, not romantically, but a past. You know what I mean? When I went to church and stuff. We're actually in the church having a meeting, and I have no, which I'm very happy about. I have no problem with the church. I've no resentments anywhere there. That's gone. There's no fear around any of that stuff. So I'm happy with that one. You know what I mean? So I feel okay with that. But I wonder, I'm looking at it, is it because she was always a bit of a go-getter, and she's strong-minded businesswoman, you know what I mean? So I always felt a little bit inferior to her. So I'm looking at that stuff.
And if I feel inferior to someone, I'm going to be kind of on the defensive, right? Waiting for, trying to prove myself somehow, you know, I'm going to be somewhere inside ego. I'm going to be trying
going on there, yes. Yeah. But I do feel on par with her now. It's how I feel. I'm on par now. That don't bother me now, really.
Okay.
But this, let me finish that. You might be right. But what I'm trying to say is her doing this is like, that's how she used to be. She was always like that. And it's like, hang on a minute here. But I never fronted her with it. I never said, hang on a minute here. You know, and what I'm saying is that really, I can try and love her. She's a lovely woman. I'm all right with her, except for this point. You know what I mean? It's this bit. And she's a bit of a controller. I know for that. We take Mickey out for that. And it's getting at me. And I think, well, okay, I can accept it, Steve. And I can. But in the game, which we play, she's sort of undermining me. And I need to say something. And I don't like, that's the bit I'm trying to avoid.
And there's the inferiority, you know, from if someone in our reflection, our external environment is undermining us or criticizing, or, well, it comes in all forms, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Then it is my own, it's a reflection of my own sense of, I'm undermining myself. I'm judging, criticizing myself still inside. And that is reflecting as this person. And it's something, I know it's something you've worked on before, but it's probably just still there. That it's, well, if it's showing up in your experience, it must be still being believed. But noticing as well, did you respond to this better than you would have before? Did you have less negative emotion than you would have before? It's important to notice any progress in this area too. It's still there, it's still showing up, but
yeah, I say I am aware of it. But it's we also say we're not doormats, so there's a point where hang on, you're out of order here. You know what I mean? Just, you know what I mean? I make mistakes, okay, but just leave it out. I've got to say that to her, possibly, and still work on this.
And
right?
the right words will come out, the appropriate words, the appropriate response will come out as you're really looking at what story you're believing still inside.
That's right.
If I'm feeling inferior to someone else, or that they're undermining me, I'm going to find it, if I'm agreeing that I'm not good enough somewhere inside, I'm going to find it very hard to stand up for myself and say something in a loving but direct way, because of a sense of inferiority. So as we really look at that, you find the right words come out anyway. In fact, it was only from looking at that I was able to say to certain beings in my life, I don't really deserve to be treated that way, or please don't speak to me that way. Something that would just not have come out of my mouth, as I'd have just got really angry about it and stewed over it for a long time. Wouldn't have been able to speak about it.
Yeah, because I think what I would have done in the olden days, I'd have just laughed it off, which I've tried to do in a sense, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I might have a novel about you're a bloody control freak, something like that, you know what I mean? I never actually sit down or have a word.
Yeah.
And bring it and talk properly about it. That's what I mean. So
maybe that's what the feeling of resentment is when I really looked, there's a real quiet voice inside me that just wanted to speak up for myself, just to kind of assert myself, be able to assert myself in a loving way, but not to continue to just take this, from a certain being, many beings at the time, but and that kind of boiled up as anger until I actually said something. But when I said something, it came out from a direct but loving place. It was polite and it had an effect. It stopped the action. The words were very effective from that place.
I'm sure it will be, yeah, I've said it. I'm sure it will be. But my head's going round now, his keeps going around the scenario now, so I've got a few more days of this now till it settles down. I'm pretty sure I'll say something on next Wednesday, but
and just not acting straight out of that resentment or that frustration or unworthiness, just taking a moment and what do I really want to say to this being, and where can we find a nice quiet place to sit and say it so it's not in the middle of everyone else, or something like that where it's better for both of you. Yeah. And just to do what's right for both of you, because if you can assert yourself in a very loving way, it won't be met by this counter attack that comes back all the time.
Well, that's what I've been in my head sort of thing. I explained to her what she's doing wrong, and I thought, no, that's not what it's about, Steve.
Maybe just not the best way to start.
No, but that's how I am. You know what I mean? That's what I would control. You're controlling. You can do that, and I'm thinking, I won't even say that. No, it's just saying this is how it makes me feel.
It may be a fact that this person is acting this way, but is that the best way to heal it?
I won't try that. I understand that.
From an honest, open place. You could even start with, maybe we can have a better way, maybe we can work on our communication or something like that, where it's opening up an avenue for things to resolve, isn't it?
It will, yes, yeah. It will. It's just I dread these sort of confrontations because they go around in my head till I come. Yeah. I've made this decision and then forget about it, but I can't. It keeps going around, you know what I mean? But that's what I've got. That's part of it, I suppose.
Yeah, that's the inferiority again, isn't it?
I don't know what that is.
It's just a sense of not feeling safe to stand up for yourself. So mine kind of mulls it over and
That's
has
it.
a thousand
Right.
imaginary conversations in your head, so that you don't have to have that one conversation with that being.
That's right. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Lovely.
Okay,
Well,
thank you.
hope it goes well. Thank you. Okay, we'll take Sharon's question and then we'll leave it there for this evening. So whenever you're ready, Sharon. Hi, Sharon. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. It's interesting because I'm still a little confused by the awakening. All my children are here visiting, right? So that's a lot of people. And my two sons got in a huge fight, and then my husband got involved. And I'm sitting, and I had no reaction inside, which is not the real me. I mean, that's not the Sharon I knew that wouldn't react. So I knew that, okay, really, this is getting better because, but then this exhaustion from the chronic, these labels of chronic fatigue, and I have Lyme disease, starts going through my head, and I'm so exhausted to the mind says, I'm never going to get better, so I won't awaken. And what I want to know is if the ego is just a thought, why is it so relentless in its pursuit? Why would me as the self want to be like exhausted? I mean, what is this? Like, it's the one being that's waking up. So how much control do I really have? That's what I really want to know.
Yeah.
Obviously I'm doing well. You could see, because if I didn't have an inside thing, that was pretty good, so that was weird. I mean, I still don't feel thoughts are falling away, but not the tiredness. Boy, that's got me like, so there. Yeah.
Well, wherever something is troubling us, like the tiredness, it must be where we're resisting it. So if you have some idea, I mean, you've just spoken beautifully about a place in your life that's really starting to, at least the internal response to the situation wasn't one, from a place of separation. And that's great. But perhaps with this tiredness, there's an idea being entertained that seems to be given a lot of validity. So what is the idea about this? The body has this condition. What's the thought saying? What's mind saying about it? That you shouldn't be tired, or what's going on in the mind?
It tells me I'm a failure. I'm never going to make it.
There you go. So because you're feeling this way, it's evidence that you're failing, says mind, right? Something like that. Yeah.
Yes.
And along with that goes, you should be feeling this way if you were awakened, right? Something like that. Yeah.
Right.
And it's just really the control mind has is because we're really giving it importance, because we're, at least in this area, we're still trying to match up to some image of what awakening looks like.
Right.
I'll know when I'm there, I'll know when I'm awakened when, and we all have this checklist of things.
Right.
When my body feels better, when my bank account looks better, when my relationship with my kids, whatever it is, right? And we all have, when this emotion's gone, when I don't argue with that person anymore, we all have a checklist that when we can check those boxes, that's it there. I'm there now, I've reached that. And that's an impossible thing to achieve, isn't it? Because you are already the self, as you know. So just to recognize here in this area, I'm just following the ego's image of what awakening should look like, rather than actually awakening looks like this moment right now where the body's tired, right? That's the simple truth of awakening, isn't it? This is how it is right now. It's showing up as this
so it's
thing
about
here.
Acceptance. It's about just accepting and not listening to the mind on how it's supposed to look, because that's basically where the trap is for me.
And of course, if the body's feeling a certain way, feeling ill or tired, of course you would like it to feel better. We're not denying that at all. But we're not going to say because you are tired that it means you're not the self. There's a huge difference there, right?
Okay, that's because of the failure thing that came up all through my life, and I actually did fail a lot. So, it showed up that way because I am the self.
It's impossible. It's impossible to fail at being the self because you already are it. We just need to stop. We all need to stop referencing what's happening in our experience
Right.
as evidence that we're not there yet. And then what's happening in our experience will begin to look more like we want it to anyway. Because ego is, mind, separate self is always comparing two things, where I think I am and where I think I should be, or in this case, what awakening looks like, my image of it. You know, it will look like this and I'll know when I'm there. You know, so we have to kind of deconstruct that picture. And here's one area, you're obviously working through that really well with your children. You know, when awakening happens, then I'll have beautiful, harmonious relationships with all my children. Well, maybe not, you know, maybe there'll be friction still, but you won't be using that as evidence that you're not the self. That's the key difference.
Great. Okay. Yes. You just nailed it for me.
Yeah.
Yes. Because that's what I think I'm looking for, the evidence that I'm not awake. And I've already been, you know, that I've already had so much, you know, process in this process. So.
And the simple truth is, and it really changed everything for me when I really got this, that there is no thought, emotion, experience, or situation or circumstance that I can use. There is no phenomenon that I can use to define how I'm doing at being the noumenon, the self. What would phenomena have to do with it anyway about the space they're appearing in? Can I really keep referencing this thing that keeps happening in my life or in my body or in my relationships or whatever it is, or this emotion that keeps showing up that I really don't want or something? Can I really keep referencing that as evidence of how I'm doing? Which is the essence of ego, isn't it? It's always doing that. It's looking, taking stock and going, well, this doesn't look like the Buddha. You know, the Buddha wouldn't be like this.
Right.
But
So
the
it's
Buddha
okay.
is this right now, isn't it? This is what the Buddha looks like right now, however you are.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Helen.
Good to talk to you.
It's good to talk to you.
Okay, we'll leave it there for this evening. And thank you for joining me. Namaste.